for June Republican congressional nominee French Hill.
Rex, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you today. A real treat. So when you said 31 years, Rex, it made me realize I've been coming to these meetings for about 22 of those 31 years, which makes me feel extremely old. But I told Lyford, Ronell, I told Chairman Nelson over the years, I'm a morning guy. If you want to see me at Political Animals, go back to 7 o'clock. But I can't help but add my deep appreciation to the fantastic job Ron Maxwell does, making this beautiful Janet Huckabee Grand Hall the place to do an event around our state, and Ron and his staff are great. Dan, back there in the back, and Freddie's gone back in the kitchen, but these two guys have been here for years, making the citizens of our state feel welcome, and they do such a wonderful, wonderful job. And I also want to call attention that our distinguished governor has walked in the back of the room. Everybody, you might leave me a round of applause. Welcome, Governor. Well, I want to introduce my family. I've got to start out by saying the best member of this campaign team during the primary the past 6 months, without a doubt, was my bride, Martha Hill. 26 years. Stand up, Martha. Let everybody say hi to you. Hey, I mean, campaigning is a blast. That's why people get involved in politics. They love meeting people. They love hanging out. They love going to every known barbecue joint in America, every gun show, every range, every picnic, every church social, every cookie baking contest. But we got to spend our 26th wedding anniversary at a family council event, perfect, right? At Larry's Pizza. I love you, baby, and I want to tell you, I think it should be a new tradition. Larry's, you know, what can you say? It was great. It was great. Then I want to introduce Liza Hill, who I think is the true star of the TV world. Liza, thank you for being here. And then, because everybody knows that healthcare is probably one of the top topics in politics, today I brought my dad, who's my Medicare advisor. Jay, stand up. He's 88 years old, and so if you want to know what's going on with Medicare, you can ask him. He'll shoot you straight. There won't be any spin involved in that. But it's great to be here at this audience with so many friends from so many great associations that I have civically in our city and in our state. There are a lot of good friends here. I love coming to Political Animals, and I appreciate you including me. You know, when I think about Political Animals, I also was a little troubled during the primary. You never know what to expect in the primary. You never know what the issues are going to be. You never know what the hot topics are. You never know what a candidate's reaction was going to be, but I could have never guessed that I would be compared to animals in a primary. And so I just couldn't get over being compared to a cat by one and a dog by the other, but I survived it, and now it's on to talk to you about what I think the important issues are as we go into this fall campaign. The first question I always get asked is, why are you running for Congress? Why are you leaving your private business life? Why are you leaving this family on a daily basis that you're so much in love with to go to Washington? Why would you go to Washington when recently we found out that the Congress has a 16% approval rating? I mean, for them, that's skyrocketing. It's skyrocketing. Why would you get involved in that? I see Walter Husband in the audience. The other day, we were at the Historic Arkansas Museum. They have a fantastic exhibit on the Arkansas toothpick, the Bowie knife. And if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. It's part of your lore. Bowie knife used in the 1850s to kill a member of Congress. The Bowie knife used on the floor of the General Assembly here in Arkansas in the 1830s to kill a member. So the Bowie knife has a great Arkansas tradition. You have to go read about it. But I walk in there and I'm thinking I'm running for Congress, I'm looking at this beautiful exhibit, Bill Worthen's a great tour guide. Then I come up to the panel that says, Arkansas toothpick, Bowie knife, only used by border ruffians or members of Congress. So again, you know, why are you doing this? And I'm doing it because I believe, like Teddy Roosevelt said back in 1919, that people need to be in the arena, that people should not be the critic of other people. They need, if you're going to criticize, why don't you get up and run for public office and be a part of solutions in this country? So the number one reason I'm running is because I believe Teddy Roosevelt's call for action, which was to be in the arena, be a participant, work for solutions that better the lives of people in our country. So that's the number one reason. The second reason is I don't like the course that our government is on. I think that the government is adrift in where we should be focused on trying to grow our economy. I believe that with a $17 trillion debt and with an ever-increasing overlap of red tape and regulatory burden, that our economy is growing much slower than it could be. Coming out of the deep recession that we have, we should be growing much faster right now. And really, we're not. And after 6 years of effort, we're just creeping back up to employment levels that we had back in '07. That is not a successful recovery. There's a lot of uncertainty out there in the job creating business sector, free market part of our economy. And we need to be nurturing that. And so I believe that in addition to being in the arena, trying to be a part of the solutions to problems facing our country, that we ought to be focused on trying to get our economy to grow faster. You know, I really think that we almost need an intervention. We need an intervention in where we are in this economic performance. And I'll speak as a business guy. It's hard to quantify the burden of regulatory policy in this country. But I've described it, you know, as a wet blanket over the economic certainty that business people have when they try to create jobs. And for the last 6 months, I've traveled around the district, all 7 counties, listening to stories. I've heard about people who were self-insured and who lost that self-insurance as a part of the Affordable Care Act and now pay more and have a higher deductible, and they're frustrated about that. I've heard about people who have got a business enterprise that's just not growing like they thought it would, and they have no employment increase. They want an employment increase, but the economy is not growing fast enough. And so wages are stagnant and jobs are stagnant because we don't have economic growth. Last week, I talked to a group of veterans. They came, we just had a roundtable discussion, just open issues about the Veterans Administration service level here, issues of importance to them. And one thing I heard was the quality of care for veterans here in our city is good. But generally they thought that it was a pretty good situation here. But the customer service issue is what frustrates veterans. I had a guy, you know, give me his service card that was replaced by the VA not long ago. But this card is what every fully disabled veteran used to have. And when they held it up, when they walked into the VA, they got instant service. They were 100% disabled due to a service-related matter. And they got first in line kind of treatment. And to me, this isn't about more money for the VA. This is about a management challenge. And again, that speaks to this wet blanket of not being proactive. We need and expect our government officials to be accountable, to be responsible with the money that they spend, and to deliver good customer service in that case. And that failure calls into question why we would want to concentrate all of our resources in a federal health system. So customer service is important there. And I carry this around to remind me that we got guys with 100% service disability walking in the VA and they're not going to the front of the line. They're waiting weeks for service, for treatment. And that's something we need to be concerned about. I've talked about shifting power back to the states. We have really not talked much about federalism for years in this country. Wasn't a big part of the Bush administration. Wasn't a particularly big part of the Clinton administration. President Obama has not really evidenced it, where we try to send back to the states and local governments those authorities, those powers that are best handled by a General Assembly, or by a governor, or by a mayor, or a county, so that it is more accountable to the taxpayer. Right now, we send all of our money to Washington, and we get a top-down solution, whether it's an education solution, a healthcare solution, a one-size-fits-all, that does not reflect the kind of individuality and personal choice that our whole country was built on. So when you think about that regulatory burden, that lack of service, that concentration at the top, trying to push it down, that, in my judgment, is what's creating a lot of the anxiety and frustration in the country today, whether it relates to a personal family set of issues of trying to get service from Social Security, service from the VA, or a business guy who's just trying to start a business or expand a business. And I think all government leaders need to be very, very sensitive to that. Sometimes I wonder in this regulatory system that we'd be better off if Siri was running. I can't get Siri to do anything on my phone. But I think sometimes we might be better off if she were calling the shots in the regulatory bureaucracy. I want to tell you that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected and trusted by the hardworking people in the 2nd Congressional District, that I will be a good listener, that I will be a proactive member of Congress, and that I'm going there with two things I think that sets me apart from my opponent. Number one, for 35 years, I've worked out in the private sector. I've helped create jobs. I've built a business myself over the last 15 years with my team. I've lived under the tax laws, the regulatory laws of this country, and I've helped other people do that by raising capital for them, being a banker for them. It's been my pleasure. It's been an awesome opportunity to help create enterprise in Arkansas. And I believe that sets me apart from my opponent, that I understand how this economy works. And secondly, and I don't think it's a detriment, that in my young life, I worked on the Hill briefly for a couple of years, that I had the pleasure of working for President H.W. Bush on his White House staff, seeing how the executive branch and the legislative branch work together, or should work together. I believe that means for you, the taxpayers here, the citizens in this district, know on-the-job training. I know how to be effective when I go to Washington to talk to a regulatory agency, to structure a congressional hearing, to get an amendment added to a bill, and I believe that is a benefit to the citizens of the 2nd Congressional District. And I commit to you that I'll work hard, I'll be proactive, I'll be a good listener, and unlike government agencies, I'll pride myself in my congressional office for great customer service, just like we try to do in the private sector. So in short, my vision for America is a more accountable America. My vision for America is a place where the people closest to the problem try to solve it, and not have a solution coerced or imposed from the central government in Washington. And I believe that we can do that. And I believe one congressperson can make that difference. And that's why I hope that you'll support me this fall on November 4th, and I very much appreciate it. And of course, in Political Animals tradition, I welcome your questions. Thank you very much.
We'll have plenty of time for questions, so be thinking them up. You know, French mentioned the low approval ranking that we see right now for members of Congress. There is some breaking news that has occurred this morning that you might be aware of. As you know, there's been a controversy going on for a number of months now about the name of the National Football League team in our nation's capital. It is insulting to large numbers of Americans. It's costing them corporate sponsorship, so it has just been announced this morning the Washington Redskins will be dropping Washington from their name. Did want to make sure you all had that breaking news that just came out of the nation's capital. With that, we'll open up for questions. It is a long time political, we'll get to everybody, but Political Animals Club, I explained to French, Annie Abrams is our Helen Thomas. So, Miss Abrams, I'm sure here she is in the middle. I know you've got a question, Ms. Abrams. If you don't, I've already called on you, so think of one right quick.
No, thank you. French, I followed your career since you've been in this city, and I know that I have no doubt that your monetary IQ is high. I know that your patriotism is high, but I didn't hear you today, and I haven't been able to find anywhere where you're dealing with it. My watching of Congress is now one of the skills that you need to have, and I go to the hearings on television and listen to the committee chairs who are chairing the hearings. You now have to be a global person. You have to know how to deal with the world. It's not just America anymore. And so I want to know, I asked your opponent, what committee, and when you're on a committee, I expect you to be an asset. What committee do you think you can serve on that will help us from a global standpoint? When I think in terms of the issues of today, they are now no longer just national. They're interwoven, international. Where would you rate yourself on a, I'm an old teacher, from an A to an F. Where would you rate yourself that you'll make it an international skills as a congressman?
Thanks, Annie. And Annie and I have been friends literally since Martha and I moved home back in the early 90s. We were honored to be both appointed by Mayor Daley to serve on a task force to work on historic preservation in our inner city and our community at large. And I loved her, and I appreciate your question. It's a fine question. So I'm going to do two parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about my views on our place in the world and international matters, and then talk to your point about committee assignments. I believe that that's another source of frustration here, in our country, is where are we going? What is our national and international strategy as the United States? And I believe there are two things that are important. We need to be a good partner around the world. We have since World War II, a partnership in NATO and Europe. We need to make sure that our country partners in the EU and NATO know that we're there for them, that we've got their back. And our country negotiated a forces agreement, and in my view, a very defensive posture to help Eastern Europe at the end of the Bush administration, and Mr. Obama did not go through with it. And it created a fracture in our relationship in the North Atlantic Treaty area. And I think it was an error. And now we see what's happening in the Ukraine and the reassertion of trying to get the band back together in Russia as a challenge to that. We need to tell our partners in Asia that the American naval superiority in the South Sea is important, and that we're going to be a defender of open seas in Southeast Asia for our world trade issues and our economic issues. I believe sincerely that we do need a national energy strategy. Every president since Richard Nixon has talked about it. But what's fascinating to me is we're right now on the cusp of energy independence in our country. Energy independence in our country will give us a national security advantage. It will allow us to aid our allies in Southeast Asia and in Europe in no way that we've not done before, and it will give us an advantage, in my judgment, of our positioning for our strategic relationships in the Middle East. And so I hear what you're saying. I believe it is a source of anxiety in the country. I've worked abroad in over 30 countries in private business, as well as representing President Bush in Japan for our bilateral relationship with Japan. And I represented President Bush in all the countries of Eastern Europe after the wall fell. And it was my job to help provide economic assistance and know-how in the banking sector and in the security sector in those countries. I've been behind the Berlin Wall. I've been in China before freedom. I don't want to go back in that direction. No system in our world history has freed more people from disease, more people from poverty than the free enterprise system around the world. It is what has been the engine that has allowed us to raise money for charitable causes, to cure disease in Africa, to bring people up from subsistence, and there's more to come. So we need to honor and we need to be a voice for that around the world. On your question regarding committee assignments, obviously I think if you said where could He'll be put to work immediately that would be of benefit to the American people for either an international topic or a domestic one. It would be service on the Financial Services Committee or the Ways and Means Committee for our Congress. We will have vacancies on both those committees with Congressman Griffin and Congressman Cotton leaving the House. And I think that would be a place where I could be productive and immediately help our country from the get-go. Thank you for your question.
Representative Collins?
Thank you very much, Rex. French, what do you think about changing the U.S. corporate income tax to help turn our country back into a good jobs magnet?
Yeah. Charlie asked a question about the corporate income tax. And I think when I hear from business people in the 7 counties talking about their own personal situation, I always hear about the complexity of the tax code first for small business people and families. It takes too long to deal with it. It's too complicated. I have so many records. It's 80,000 pages long. My CPA and I spend too much time on this topic. So at one level, that's the first thing I hear from talking to business people around the 2nd District. On your point, though, to keep America globally competitive, also to Ms. Abrams' point, we now have the highest corporate level of taxation, state and federal combined, in the economic world, in the developing countries. We're up at 39.5% all in. And many of our competitors are in the low 20s now. Our countries that we nurtured after the Berlin Wall fell, what did we do? We lobbied them. Have a low, flat, simple, straightforward tax system to attract capital to your countries. They did. And look at Poland's success since then. They ate our advice, but we're not eating our own cooking. And so I would support moving the corporate tax rate down into the low 20s for the purposes of making us more competitive nationally. It will keep our Fortune 100 to Fortune 500 companies that do business internationally headquartered here, in my judgment, keep their cash flow here, keep their investment here. Right now they have a global incentive to move off to lower tax jurisdictions around the world. And we need to remove that incentive and encourage our international businesses to earn all their income here and pay that lower rate here. Dr. Angel.
As a student of Teddy Roosevelt in French, you used that analogy very well, I think, in your earlier comment about Roosevelt and what you would do, the lessons you learned from him. But Roosevelt had difficulty in the state legislature, as you recall. He was a different type of Republican. And as a more established Republican, forgive me if I'm incorrect in that, going up to a more conservative Congress with a bipolar sort of system there, Democrats polarizing against Republicans, how would you actually work with those folks to make yourself effective? You're only one of 435. You not only have Democrats, but you have Republicans to deal with too.
Amen. Dr. English, always one of the great receptive voices in this club, and one who I always enjoy your comments. I hope you'll keep them coming, in spite of not being daily in the classroom. So the question about Teddy Roosevelt, yeah, he had a rough time up in the New York General Assembly. He had a lot of energy, and I think that that's part of what I admire about President Roosevelt was his energy, his engagement. And one thing I don't see in Washington in both parties is that proactive engagement. I believe that if you want change at an agency in government to solve a constituent problem or to tackle something that's going on, one of the best strategies you can use as a member of Congress is not to make the phone call from your staff to the head of government affairs at that agency head and set up a meeting that takes place 6 weeks later that is of no consequence. I believe the way you get change in an agency is you get in your Chevrolet and you drive downtown and you walk up unannounced and you meet with that agency head. And I think that's the kind of energy Roosevelt brought to his political career. It's the kind of action I would take if I were elected to Congress, whether it's a Republican issue or a Democratic issue in the House. We need people who go, who are engaged and who are proactive and not sitting around waiting for the next press availability. The other thing I'd say, since you brought up TR, thank you for the echo. There's only one place named for Teddy Roosevelt in the state of Arkansas, Rex. Up on Highway 57, White County, Senator, Roosevelt, Arkansas, up in White County, and I go by and kind of just get out and touch the pavement there. Every once in a while to make sure that I know where my roots are, but I point out to you that if we're not in the 2nd Congressional District, I wouldn't drive up there.
One quick thing, I would encourage our candidates to be careful in the Political Animals Club of Little Rock, Arkansas. When you say TR, that means Tommy Robinson. So.
I can see it on Twitter this afternoon. The guy, you know, I can see it now. Priscilla.
Well, my question is, I think, a little less complicated. It's about Medicare. My grandmother is 81 years old and now having some severe problems. And the cuts that Obamacare implemented to Medicare, which was like over $700 billion, and then break it down to Arkansas, it's over $5 billion, and then per person, it's over 10 grand. That's obviously affected people like my grandmother. And I was wondering what solution you may have for that, or what comments you have for that.
Yeah. So the question was, in the President's health care reform, one of the ways that's paid for the Affordable Care Act, besides raising people's taxes and reducing other service levels, is to, on paper at least, cut payments out of Medicare. And that is, I think all Americans found that, they don't understand it. We're creating a new program to benefit a group of people that currently don't have certain benefits, but we're going to take money away from our seniors in Medicare to do that. And I think that's been a source of the anxiety and frustration over the Affordable Care Act. And that's comment number one. Comment number two is, it's why I think the Affordable Care Act was ill-conceived when it was considered by the Congress and attempted to be passed with no bipartisan support. The question I would have asked is, what is it we're trying to do here? So one question is, we want to extend care to those who don't have it basically through our Medicaid program. Secondly, we want to help people that are frustrated through pre-existing conditions. And that we had pre-existing conditions rules in all 50 states, and they were working. But those were abolished on 1031 as a part of moving everybody to healthcare.gov. If we had just simply focused on what tweaks in our health delivery system do we want to try to tackle on a bipartisan basis, with the patient being at the center and the patient and doctor relationship at the center, I think a different outcome would have taken place, and we wouldn't be faced with higher taxes across the board in our country and cuts to the Medicare program, which has all of its own problems, as all the physicians in here and healthcare delivery people know. So that's why I think it should be severely redone. And I've said that for 6 months. It is not working. And I think that's because some of the premises around it were false to begin with. And that's the result of an unintended, or in this case, intended consequence of a law that I don't believe was well considered. Yes, sir.
French thank you, French. In Ventura County over the last 5 years, we've lost 700 jobs, just in one rural county. What's your specific ideas about recreating those jobs in the rural parts of the 2nd District?
Yeah. Thank you, Johnny Rhoda from Clinton. Thank you for that question. One of the things that I think will help our economy grow jobs, and let me start out with an issue. We're back up to about as many jobs as we had from when the market slid. But they're not composed the same way. There are more jobs in healthcare, but there are fewer jobs in construction. There are fewer jobs in manufacturing. Our manufacturing base did not participate in this recovery. And one thing that's useful out in rural areas, particularly in the South, is manufacturing base. Small and large. It doesn't have to be Big River Steel up in Osceola. It can just be a small product manufacturer. So what I believe that we ought to have as a strategy is anything that will enhance bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. We've talked about the tax code, that will help. We've talked about the regulatory burden, that will help. But I also would note that that national energy strategy of low-cost, abundant North American feedstocks of fuel, gas and oil, will help bring that manufacturing renaissance back. And Arkansas is working hard, thanks to our General Assembly, thanks to the passion that Senator English has, of building the workforce to attract that. So at the congressional level, I can help recruit business. I'd love to go be called by any mayor or any member of the General Assembly or governor to go help recruit a business to our state. I can make that personal commitment. I want to work for macro policies that attract jobs back to the U.S., particularly in manufacturing, in my judgment. And at that micro level, all of us, county by county, we need to be fighting for a workforce that's educated, trained, and focused. And I see new commitment to that. I see new commitment to that. People know that is the secret to attracting those jobs, is to have that workforce. We all have land. We all have motivated city and local officials who want those jobs, but we have to have a trained workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you all for inviting me.
Thank you for being with us today. Thank all of you for attending, and we'll see you at our July meeting.